I push it through the understandables that it's put itself that they think it's in a checkmate situation. In a checkmate situation, that it comes from the health system and refers back to the health system, in that folding back in on itself. Like someone who can't bake a cake. I push it to the understandable fact that you will see the detail in clear evidence and the light of day. That workers like Alison, from that the matriarch of their ward, for that unit of the actual hospice we speak of, is actually responsible for the actual beginnings to where this man is supposedly mentally tormented, where it goes into the actual understandable fact of the difference, that when it folds itself over, it runs itself back into their actual system, in that like throwing them into the mixer. If it was a mixer of certain things like a blender, where within that it grasps and grabs itself off one person onto the other, in that someone mental from the beginning to entrap somebody of able mind, able body, to try and say they are mentally deranged, as they push it through the courts, that person is supposedly unresponsive to some kind of condition of understandings, and it will show the understandable corruption of this area, the Sutherland Shire, that they have incorporated police and ambulance to pick people up saying they are mentally tormented and take them into their health system, holding them in imprisonment through forced inoculations of injectables to render them incapacitated and take away their motor neuron skills, in that rendering them like a spastic from their injectables, from how powerful their drugs are. Go into for furtherment where they use people from their actual situation like that, people of their actual understandable fact, their family itself, who would turn against that person in the understandable fact of it, to say has a problem of understandables, where really it's a cash grab from no more than the person's lustuous to live off another person's expense, in that where they will cash in on their inventive in for furtherment and physical understandings to life itself. As I push it now, as it goes for furthermore, that these people aren't just responsible for certain demographics of the unjust to what we speak about on the actual clientele, but actual entrapment upon people of financial structure who sit back and are taken away from their capacity to actually be able to use that, because they try to entrap them from such a young age where they are abusing them the whole way through. If I was going to say it in a blatant way of understanding to make it layman's terms, it would be like somebody who received the victims of compensation, a crime payment, as a child from abuse. Of the abuse where victims of compensation, a crime payment from the actual policings and the government is paid out to that child, and the parent, caregiver, has stepped in to say that person, be it child, etc., is of mental incapacity to attainably use its one's own funds. But I push it that these people are connivingly lying, trying to run it into a checkmate situation of its circulation, that it would hit the situations of capacity of understandings, a recording system of internal remote access, and the understandable unsub for who they have done this to, in that the amount they have done this to, as it always refers itself back in that circle onto the understandings of the mental health, in that with backings of the police and numerous other people which show the corruption of this understandable fact of detail. I push it the full fact of understandings that these conniving cowards are also pushing drugs through a business where they say it is a simple florist, but the understanding is the flower food that goes with the packages to their customers who are everyday purchasers of flowers receive the package of the crystal, which is for the flower food that goes into the water, which is actually the amphetamine drug. I tested that drug with an RDT, which I got off the police force, in that test in their packet, and it came back blue and purple. In that the colors that transfer and transform from one to say is a positive result, like showing the strips on a mobile drug test in a motor vehicle, like being a highwayman or an actual police officer testing somebody in a motor vehicle, which most people would be familiar with from television. Television shows like RBT, Motor Patrol from New Zealand, and different shows from around the world. I show the full fact of understandable truth and logic, in that the actual swindlings that their startup business is because of these victims of compensation or crime payment, which they are abusing against that actual person to say is and has able mind, able body, can go and do it themselves. But the situation is that they've abused and lied the whole way from the start, in that through the courts, in for furtherment to receive that to begin with, which they have then tried to take on board to themselves and allocate it to their life to live a luxurious life. That's what I push, that they have abused that situation, and that's the saddest part of it, that this person was attacked and they tried to say was incapacitated and left mentally and physically broken so they could receive the victims of compensation or crime payment, and from that they have kept that for themselves, trying to include that man is mentally incapacitated if it ever comes up, in that as it revolves itself around the circle back onto the mental health with their drug syndicate, in for furthermore as they push it in the society of Australia. That is the saddest part. But the thing is, I've got the clincher, the actual proof of understandable fact, the drug test results, and the actual boxes of their drugs confiscated from their facility, which they call a merchant shop of Australia. I say this message is easy enough to understand now in the logistics to record it over and say it in simplistics of time upon speech. I push it that they say and accuse the man who supposedly mentally capacitated, and they say he's supposedly done crimes against humanity and crimes against society, and they are making some kind of imprisonments to say reprimanding and reprimanding somebody upon their own self, in that using the corruptives of what was spoken of. It goes into show the understandable fact that these people are playing like they are the judge, jury, and executioner. I see no other reason to pass this understandable fact that they have abused the situation all the way through to push it that they are in some kind of hierarchy above the power of the law, of the Australian law, the Commonwealth law, and the law of the Crown, for what Australia has been established on, and that they have taken it into their own empowerment to try and push their weight of understandings that they will be that, for what I speak of, the judge, jury, and executioner, for how they believe they will reprimand somebody without the actual physical proof, without beyond reasonable doubt, and the understandings that it's a lie upon the corruption of their power of understandings to push them into the fact that they are supposedly within that for furthermore of the detail fact. I'm Jacques Marceau. That's 11.5 minutes on my dial-up to what it says in Time of Understandings to say that. Thank you very much.